Good morning. This is Rob Downey, and we're continuing our series in the Laughing Liberal Lectures. Today, we're going to talk briefly about 9 myths that you might come across when you're talking to conservatives. And before we get there, I want to talk about 3 flat-out incorrect beliefs that might be shared, probably are shared by all the conservatives that you talk to. And I want to talk about 4 things that 80% of Americans agree on. There's more than that, but it's important to know that we're not always talking to people who are unpersuadable. If you are, then you are. Nothing that can be done about that. If you're talking to an unpersuadable and if they deserve the term, then I would just say you need to spend your time better if you intend to be helpful in a political discussion. But 4 things that 80% of Americans agree on: that we should secure the borders and settle the status of the people that are here. 80% of Americans agree that sensible regulations and liability should be attached to gun ownership. 80% of Americans agree that government does more for the wealthy than for the rest of us. And 80% of Americans believe that government service benefits officials too much. In other words, people go into government service, some of them, not all, not even most, but some people go into government service for its benefits to them, so they will boost their likes or they will be able to become a lobbyist. So government service is too beneficial to some people that go into it more than it is to us, who they're meant to serve. That gun regulation and sensible liability attached to gun ownership should be implemented, that government does more for the wealthy than for us, and that the border should be secure and the status of those who are here should be settled. So we're not always talking in a jungle conversation where people are just every person for themselves. Americans are Americans. But there's 3 incorrect beliefs you're going to run into, and they're simply wrong. So you should tell people always, talk about the cell phone in their pocket that has 1,000 times more information in it than all the libraries of the world did in the days of Socrates and Alexander. And that cell phone has 100 times the calculating power that the United States did when it put a man on the moon. So they've got the answers in their pocket. It's legal to not know, but it's not mandatory. And you have to be suspect of someone who doesn't know these 3 things. That abortion under Republican presidents falls 1/5 as fast as it does under Democratic presidents when it's falling. It falls 5 times faster under Democrats than Republicans. When abortion is rising, it's rising twice as fast under Republicans than under Democrats. And it has not risen under a Democrat since the Carter years. And he cut in half the rate of growth that he inherited. So abortions, if you want to reduce abortions, vote Democratic, period. All politicians are corrupt. That is simply not true. It is true, however, that 113, depending on how you count, 129, depending on how you count, 105 times as many Republicans are indicted and convicted of corruption than Democrats. The numbers are severe one way. There is much more corruption in Republican elected officials than in Democratic elected officials. That has been true for 70 years. And that the economy does better under Republicans, it's simply not true. The economy, depending on what measure you look at, whether you're looking at jobs or the stock market or unemployment or GNP growth, the economy does better. 2 or 3 or 3.5 times better under Democrats for the last 100 years. The data points are in, the information is proven. Abortion, if that's your single issue, vote Democratic. If your single issue is corruption, vote Democratic. If your single issue is the economy, vote Democratic. Now, what are the myths that confuse these discussions? Money is speech. Buckley v. Vallejo. every American knows money is not speech. Money is money. Speech is speech. Supreme Court was wrong. At another decision, Citizens United, that said corporations are people. Corporations are not people. Corporations are a government-created entity protected by the government, has special dispensations and protections that people don't have in terms of liability. Corporations are corporations. People are people. Speech is speech. Money is money. The Supreme Court is wrong on those two decisions. Another myth is that billionaires are needed. I have nothing against billionaires, especially billionaires who make their money by building and marketing a better mousetrap. But we've spoken before on this show that the guy who invented the TV, Farnsworth, did not become a billionaire because of invention. In other words, he was willing to invent a TV without becoming a billionaire. Thomas Edison in today's dollars would not have been a billionaire. There are no billionaires that have won a Nobel Prize, including Bob Dylan, who's close to being a billionaire, but not quite. So all the most productive people, all the scientists we know, the guy who invented TV, Thomas Edison, all of these, the Wright brothers would not have been billionaires in today's dollars. So the people who do a lot of contribution, including those who have been awarded the Medal of Honor, not a billionaire among them. Many of our best, in one definition, and brightest by any definition, have never been billionaires and didn't need to be in order to make their contributions. Billionaires should be taxed, held liable, and regulated. If they don't want those things and they say they won't contribute if they are, then leave them be. Tax them, regulate them, make them liable, and if they want to not become a billionaire, fine. Another myth, so we've got money is not speech, corporations are not people, and billionaires are not needed. They're tolerable at times when they're operationally successful, but we've talked before about the kinds of unearned advantages we don't want billionaires to have. And also the fourth myth is that shareholder capitalism works. That is the Chicago School from 1975. Milton Friedman and Anderson, I forget his first name, they invented this in my lifetime, that the corporation owes a duty only to shareholders, not to suppliers, not to be honest with customers. That's a created myth, conservative created myth. School of Chicago, it has a mother and a father, and it's a myth. We need stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism works for everybody. If we don't have well-regulated, intensely regulated capitalism will be the victim of unfettered capitalism. Never mind democracy and religion, but capitalism will fail if it's not heavily regulated. Shareholder capitalism is the worst type of capitalism. There's another myth that there's class warfare if you say anything about rich people, billionaires, and shareholder capitalism. No, class warfare is over. 98% of America lost. So don't let anybody say that what you're saying is class warfare. I wish there were class warfare, but we missed our opportunity. What we've got to do is a lot of reconstruction now. Don't let anybody stop your discussion by saying that you're waging or supporting class warfare. Another myth is that America is becoming socialistic. That discussion is also over. We are a socialist country. We're a social democracy. We need to have slightly more socialism, which is a societal construct, in order to control our economic construct, capitalism. And we need more socialism because it works. The canal system and the railroads of Lincoln, Eisenhower's interstate highway system, schools, hospitals, patent system, courts of law, all of these things that we do for us that our opponents call socialism, we need more of. We're a social democracy. We have been for decades, and we need to do slightly more socialism in our democracy in order to help capitalism survive. And that another myth is that the advantages of wealth are mostly won by hard work. Well, they're mostly won by financing and marketing. Those are the two main ways. After inheritance, which accounts for 70% of wealth in this country, most wealth is made by financing and marketing, not by operational success. And the second to final myth has to do with Supreme Court. You have to read a bit to know about this, but originalism, that the founders set out the conditions under which we should run this country. The founders led a upper class elite revolution against the elites of England. They were property owners, white, male, and 71% of them owned slaves. We can continue to think about our country. We don't have to be bound to the prejudices of our founders. The last myth is one that I don't know if it affects you or not, but we are not a Christian nation. We are not designed to be a Christian nation. Any discussion of God in our history is not necessarily a Christian God. And mostly the Constitution and the Declaration are silent about God, except there's a mention of a creator. Well, that certainly doesn't say that we have a Christian creator. You don't need to believe in God to be a good American. There's too many examples to count, but you have a phone in your pocket. You can look it up. We are not a Christian nation. We shouldn't be bound by the originalism of the founders. Advantages in this country need to be regulated because they're not mostly won by operational excellence. We need more socialism. There's no danger of us becoming, by the way, a communist country. Never been a communist country in history. No country in history has ever had the workers control the means of production. Class warfare is over. We need rejuvenation and reconstruction, but class warfare is over and we lost. Shareholder capitalism does not work. We need stakeholder capitalism. Billionaires are not needed, although they can be tolerated if they are regulated, taxed, and held liable. Corporations are not people, and money is not speech. Thanks very much. This has been Rob Downey for the Laughing Liberal Lectures. I'd like to finish with a poem if I could. I may have used this before. If so, I apologize, but it's appropriate to this topic because when you're talking about these myths, you're going to be talking about people who are going to have memorized them all. They're going to be bone deep. You're going to be up against some stiff resistance. And Emily Dickinson had a clue how to approach it. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies, too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. Like lightning to a child eased with explanations kind, your truth must dazzle gradually, or all the world be blind. Thank you.